Hello, welcome back. I know it's been a while, but I've been doing some research and I'm going to talk to you about Plato's Book 8, in particular, just part of it because it's all too long and complicated. In particular, the part where democracy turns to tyranny. So it's worth asking why I would want to do this. Well, I think I've mentioned this before. If someone claims that they have read the Republic and they are not talking about roughly the middle of book 8, towards the end, but more towards the middle, I think, how democracy turns into tyranny, then they're doing you a disservice. You don't know what they read or why they don't realize the relevance of what's going on. So I'm going to try to do my best to explain the importance of this, because if you believe or proclaim that we're in late stage capitalism or democracy is failing or any of that, then this is clearly the section of the book for you. I don't want to make a determination about whether or not this is prophetic and Plato's statements about the end of democracy and how it leads to tyranny are coming true. I don't want to do that. But also, there are some parallels here that maybe we need to pay attention to. And it's important to know that these people, whether they're philosophers or just general high IQ guys or, playing at philosophy or whatever, who are claiming to have read the Republic, if they're not talking about this, I got some questions. So we sort of begin with this cycle, and it's the cycle of governments, and there's four types of governments, and I'm going to get into that later. I really want to dive into the democracy statement. So it's 564D, because I'm bringing receipts because I'm pretty upset about the fact that people tell me they read the Republic. They never mention any of the interesting parts, or they totally lie about you, a la Plato's Cave. See this video if you have not. So for the democracy, they're going to divide the city into three parts. One class is, roughly speaking, political, right? Those are professional politicians. They're the professionally governing body, effectively. So the second class, when everyone is engaged in money making, these men become the wealthiest, right? And so there's a wealthy class. So it's wealthy and political class, right? And the third class, the most numerous and sovereign, which I find to be a very interesting word, do their own work, don't meddle, and don't possess much. They only participate when they get something in return. This is stated as honey. There's this whole metaphor in here about bees and hives and honey. It's very funny. If you don't think Plato's Republic is funny, you've made great errors in your reading. Grave errors in your reading. But the interesting part is they're the largest part and they won't participate unless they get a share. Therefore, they always get a share. The leaders always give them some honey. They just take most of it first. This is very interesting, right? And they're taking it, of course, from those people who have it, right? So presumably the people who have it are not the politicians or the wealthy class. That's implied. I'm not going to go out and say it's stated here because it's not, and this is 465A, right? And so we've gone from 464D to 464E to 465A, right? And that just outlines these three divisions of the city. And now he doesn't do these divisions in the other parts, right? Because their cities are divided up differently. So it's good to know. And effectively, we're going to get into more patterns here. Other people have talked about this, that the Republic is very layered at all levels, right? So the first half of the chapters sort of unfold one way, and the second half unfolds in the opposite direction, but right opposite the chapter, right, before, basically. So yeah, it gets very interesting the way it's layered. So the problem is that, obviously, as we've mentioned, some people's property gets taken, right? And they're forced to defend themselves. Makes sense, right? By speaking before the people and doing whatever they can. And that makes sense. If you have your stuff taken, like, you should probably talk about that and maybe try to get it back. Do what you can. That makes sense, right? But when they try to do this, right, their sort of reward is they're charged by the others, right? Which in this case, it's not 100% clear, right? I don't want to pretend like it's 100% clear what Plato's talking about, at least in my translation, which is the Bloom translation. But it looks like all the classes are like, yeah, we don't believe you. We're going to charge you, even if they're not radicals, right? In this case, it's desiring to make innovations, right? Just radicals. If they're not radicals, if they're being totally rational and reasonable about, hey, my property got taken, I just want it back, right? They're going to get charged with plotting against the people and being oligarchs. How ironic, right? They want special treatment. And equal treatment or fair treatment is seen as oligarchy by the democracy. Now, I've experienced this myself. Check out my video on domicide, losing a home. I should put that up here, so I'll try to do that. Yeah, that happens. So at some point, maybe it's not technically true, but it looks like we're talking about a conspiracy, right? All the other groups sort of conspire not to believe this person when they claim to have been treated unjustly in the democracy. Again, yes, that happens, right? So the injustice done to this person is not necessarily willing, right? It's out of ignorance, at least in some, probably most cases, right? And they're also deceived by the people slandering them. So there's some deliberate people slandering them who are deceiving them, right? Deceiving everybody. And so it's not just ignorance, it's flat out believing bad people, snakes, slanderers, however you want to frame it. And all of this forces the person whose property has been taken to become unwilling oligarchs. And the drone who stings them also enables this evil, right? So again, we're going back to the bee metaphor. With the drone is this numerous class, obviously, just like a beehive. The numerous class is the drones, right? And so they're, without being involved in the theft of the property, are stinging them, right? That's exactly what it feels like, by the way, just having gone through this recently. But let's note here the pattern. This whole book is about a pattern. And book 8 in particular, I've already said the whole text of the Republic is, right? But book 8 in particular is about a pattern. It's the cycle of types of government. Now, I don't want to pretend as though this is true and Plato got it right and the Republic is the authority, right? This is what it says, though, and it's interesting. I don't particularly like democracy. I don't know what the difference between aristocracy, oligarchy, and democracy is necessarily, right? A little hard to differentiate these things. It's actually mentioned in the Bloom translation at one point. But this is the cycle of government. It's a very important pattern indeed. So in this book, we go from democracy, which is, the love of honor, roughly speaking, right, to oligarchy, which is, roughly speaking, the love of property, right, where property is ruling the roost. So in democracy, war is ruling the roost. In oligarchy, property is ruling the roost. Property owners are the ones that run the place. Then it goes to democracy from there, right? And that's based on freedom and equality. Isn't that interesting? How long ago was this written? That's really weird. Now, to be fair, what we have that's successful that I would argue, does not fall into the democracy category quite as neatly as it may seem, is a democratic republic, but they are based on freedom and equality. I would argue that those concepts have been corrupted by people who either can't read or refuse to do so. Equal opportunity, at least in the United States, not equality. Those are vastly different things. And then that is what leads to tyranny. So it's this freedom and equality that leads to tyranny, which is driven by personal passions, right? And people that appeal to your personal passion. We're going to give you exactly what you want, right? Now let's take a moment and look around. These people are promising you what you want. Maybe you want everybody to cooperate in your climate thing, or your gender thing, or your we're afraid of flus every season thing. Maybe. Or maybe you want them to eat bugs, or own nothing and be happy. Maybe. Those people might be appealing to your personal passions. Now, you may say, those aren't my passions. They're someone's. Weird. It looks like tyranny, according to Plato. Just something to note. Oh, I don't know how to spot tyrants. Really, it's kind of easy. Plato gives us an outline right here. And then it's noted that the people are always accustomed to set some one man as their special leader and foster him and make him grow great. Now, I would say that that's probably true and necessary. This is the pattern of cooperation, of human cooperation, which is what humanity is based on. It's how we survive, despite the fact that we're not the strongest, we're not the quickest, right? We're not the most intelligent in the most important things at all, by the way. And it doesn't matter because we're not the strongest and the quickest. So intelligence is not going to save you. What we are is the most cooperative species along the most lines of cooperation. Now, obviously, I'm not going to cover that here. I'm just going to state that axiomatically and move on with my project of talking about Book 8 and the pattern of democracy, or the end of democracy. This pattern of human cooperation is played out because hierarchy is real and undeniable and required and will happen. So you have to set somebody up as special, as leader, and follow them and support them. You have to. It's just the way the world's set up. It's not an optional thing. It's not up to you. It's not up to you. It's not up to me. It's not up to you and me. Sorry. Disappointing. I know, but also too bad. World you're stuck with. So then it's sort of noted that once the just leader gains willing followers, right? He basically turns into a wolf. They're equating this process with turning into a wolf. You know, once you destroy one human, basically, you get a taste for destroying humans. And, you know, in your lust for revenge, basically. And so, in the way that wolf tastes blood and then wants more blood, that's how it goes anyway, it's killing all the way down, right? It's revenge all the way down. I doesn't have to be killing, but, you know, it's basically how it's couched, right? And then, interestingly, it's stated that this is the man who incites violence against those who have wealth. Now, I'm not saying I'm in disagreement here, but I'm curious about the translation at this point. The framing points more towards just wealth versus unjust wealth, or fairly gotten gains versus ill-gotten gains. And this would require discernment, which is hard. And you've got this leader, and he's just running through going, you people have wronged me. And to be fair, if the wealthy people have knowingly conspired to steal your property, however small that may be, you don't know who you can trust and who you can't, who's wealthy. How do you know? How'd they get their wealth? Probably don't know. You might think you know, but you might be wrong. Very hard to tell. Just segue to current day United States. Most of the wealth in the United States is new. It's not people who inherited it. Just saying. Not saying there aren't inheritances. If you think inheritance is bad or people who inherit wealth become more corrupt, go to Europe, my friend. Go to Europe. There are some families in Europe, in some countries, that have held wealth for 600 years. 600. Yeah, the U.S. has got nothing to complain about. Everybody that came here poor. Once they got here, they were poor, right? Everybody that got here was poor. They might have started out with wealth, I get that. But also they were poor, right? Like almost immediately. So, these guys can be, exiled from the city, right? Or killed by slander. Not sure exactly how they're parsing that, but whatever. But if that fails, he comes back as a tyrant, requesting bodyguard. And the people grant this, frightened for their leader and sure of themselves. Righteousness. And this sort of requires a quick exploration. These people are certain that they've backed the right horse. They've got a good leader. He's been wronged after all, so maybe whatever he does is right. He clearly needs a bodyguard because he got thrown out of the city. And he's been slandered. And that slander has incited violence against him. And so the people are like, yeah, we're afraid for this guy. But we're sure that he's the guy, that we need to protect him. So if you want to tell for yourself and for others about whether or not they're back on the wrong horse, there's something to this. I'm not saying it's right. There's something to this fear and confidence. Fear for the other and confidence in yourself. Now, Jordan Peterson has talked about tyranny being done out of fear. Slightly different context, granted. But maybe, because what Plato's pointing to here is tyranny is enabled by fear. Maybe tyranny feeds on fear. Worth thinking about. Not in book 8, other than what I've said. But maybe we revisit Peterson again. Now, what happens is the wealthy are charged with having money, which apparently is suddenly a crime, and therefore hating the people. Right? Well, they have more than others. Boy, that sounds like the socialists, like the communists, doesn't it? Right? And then Plato states that this leader himself doesn't lie great in his greatness on the ground, but having cast down many others, stands in the chariot of the city, now a perfected tyrant instead of a leader. This, the corruption of leadership. So the city has acted as the vessel or chariot of victory over the enemy, right? Of victory over greatness in some sense, right? And the triumph of tyranny over leadership. And then I've talked about leadership before. I would say leadership requires discernment. Knowing which leader to follow requires discernment. Tyranny looks like a lack of discernment due to fear and overconfidence. Plato doesn't say this directly, maybe, but that is my inference from the text. Look around. What do you C. It's in book 8. It's part of the fall of a democracy. We can argue about whether or not we're in a democracy or how democratic it is, fine and fair. All I'm saying is that the democratic republic that we have, say, in the US, that much of the world is trying to emulate with varying degrees of success, sure fits the description of Plato's democracy. This is a problem because it leads to tyranny. All you need to do is add fear, seemingly from any source, and confidence that you're right. And what you'll get is communism. What you'll get is tyranny. Communism always leads to tyranny because it always leads to tyranny. It's a trick. The socialist idea is a trick. The so-called tragedy of the commons is bad framing. It's a trick. The thing that controls the commonality, common spaces, the things that maybe we need to own an equal share or we need to have equal access to, that is always called government. The socialist trick is getting you to believe that you don't need government, even though it's a definitional point. You can't do without government because something has to control the common space or it's a tragedy. Yes, it is. That is correct. So, lots of themes here. 1, people claiming to know the Republic or have read the Republic aren't mentioning this. What's going on? I don't want to accuse them of anything, but also, what are you doing? It doesn't seem relevant to you to bring this up at this particular time, say over the past, I don't know, 10 years? This has been important for 10 years. I feel betrayed by these people, even if I don't know them. Why? Because either they're stupid and they didn't comprehend what Plato wrote, or they're hiding something, or they're super forgetful. If this is an important book, though, I got questions. I got real doubts. I don't know. Are you malicious? Are you stupid? I don't know. Something's going on, though. Something's going on. It's pretty clear. I don't get it. Another piece. The definition of democracy, according to Plato, looks a lot like democratic republic. And it's clearly tied up in freedom and equality. Strange words indeed. Strange concepts indeed. Keeping in mind that the ancient Greeks experimented with every type of government you can imagine and a bunch you can't. I think Dr. Lanton Jack said they experimented with over 1,000 forms of government. Can you even name 1,000 forms of government? Maybe we know how this ends and why. Maybe it's in the Republic. Now, again, I don't want you to rush out and read the Republic. Don't read the Republic by yourself, please. If nothing else, you can go to the book club that I did with the Texas Wisdom community. I'll try to link that playlist here. If you must. If you can't find other people to read the Republic with, I guess you could do that. Still not my favorite option, even though it's got my favorite person, me, in it. So I think another lesson is there's all these tells for tyranny. So there's a pattern for democracy. There's a pattern for the failure of democracy and how it slides into tyranny and why it slides into tyranny. And there's a tell for tyranny. How does this happen? Oh, it looks like the people are frightened and certain. Does it match anything you see around you with certain events, around fake news scams, about flus, maybe shots, or maybe climate, or maybe solving the political problem? Politics isn't a problem, it's a situation. You ain't solving it. It's not going away. There seem to be lots of takeaways from this one little saga. I didn't go through most of book 8. Might be the meatiest part. I'd have to go reread the whole thing. I'm not going to do that, even for my loving fans. Not by myself. It's interesting. It's important. These answers have been around. Do you get answers? You think technology changes the game? It speeds things up. The answers we've had all along in these old books. Maybe this isn't the best one, but boy, it's got some good framing that anybody from today can understand. There's nothing hidden in here at all. You have to read through the jokes, which are hysterical, to be sure. Also a little highbrow, granted. A little elitist. But I'm just going to end with, there's all this stuff here. Hopefully I've given you at least a taste for it. If you want to know more, I am going to do at least one more video on Plato's Republic on the end of book 10, which just blew my mind. Mine's still blown. And hopefully it'll blow yours too. Look, I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to do more work on this tyranny and frightened and certainty is tyranny idea. I'm going to do a little more study. I think it's worth a rabbit hole there. I hope I'm right. I never know with these things. You never know where things are going to go, right? How deep does the rabbit hole go? Exactly. So I hope to work that out. And I just wanted to thank you all for your time and attention.